For this one, some of you are saying option 3. Let's see why that is. So what is the theme? What's the central idea? And there is in fact a clue word. There is a clue word which will actually connect the other sentences very easily. What is that clue word? If you identify that one clue word, you will get your sequence. You can easily pick the odd one out. What is that clue word? Obviously from the topic sentence. Mysterious force. That's my clue phrase. Mysterious force. What is mysterious to you? Why would something be mysterious to you? When is something mysterious to you? When I don't have a clue, right? Like, I don't know where it came from. I don't know what caused it. I don't know what is the future, going to be because of that force. I have no idea. That's when it is mysterious to you, right? Something that is creating some sort of a curiosity in your head. You want to understand, but you don't have all the answers. That's why it's mysterious, right? Now, if I look at my options, the options that talks about that mysteriousness is 2, 4 and 5. We don't know the anterior of our birth and the posterior of our death. We don't know either the cause of our joy and sorrow, nor are we aware that certain subtle laws govern every living being on this earth. All these 3 sentences connect to talk about this particular word mysterious, except for 3. What is 3 saying? When I realize that I am responsible for my present state and I am the creator of my own destiny, the tendency to think and do evil is curbed. It's talking about in terms of some realization that you had personally, right? So option 3 is the odd one out. Again, in this option, no positive negative technique applied, right? It's just that one vocabulary word, mysterious. What is mysterious? When is something mysterious? Why do you feel mysterious about something? Because you have no clue. You don't have all the answers. It arouses your curiosity. It makes you think. Yeah? So 3 can again be another context somewhere down the line, right? Maybe it's a huge article. Are you following? So for the most part, these sort of questions, right? Either one of the techniques that I can apply is positive negative meaning. For the most part, I need to know words, be able to identify these clue words or clue phrases, right? Another thing, some of you might come back and ask, how do I identify the clue word? How do I know that mysterious is the clue word? How can I get that in the first place, Sylvia? If that is your question, then identify the topic sentence first, right? Because the topic sentence will always tell me, this is what this theme is about, boss. This is what this passage is about, right? And if you look at that sentence 1, let's go back. It says, it is not difficult to understand that a mysterious force governs this world, but we often fail to pay any attention to this. So how are we failing to pay attention? Because we don't know. We don't know. We're not aware. We're not certain. From this topic sentence, I know that all of my other sentences are talking about how are we failing to pay attention. We're not focusing on the right things. It could be different. So the more questions that we practice in this particular question type, we will come across many different techniques that we can apply. Right? We've just looked at 2 or 3 techniques out of the 3 questions that we've looked at. Right? So the more questions we practice, the more techniques we can apply. 5 statements are given below, labeled A, B, C, D and E. Among these 4 statements are in logical order and form a coherent paragraph passage. From the given options, choose the option that does not fit into the theme of the passage. So obviously we're looking at out of context, right? We have looked at this question type earlier also. This is not the first time we're seeing it, right? So you know what to do. It's almost, I keep saying this, it's a variation to jumble sentence. I'm looking for logical pattern. If you were there earlier for one of the previous refresher sessions, you know exactly what to look for. I shared some strategies. Do you even remember those strategies? Some strategies we looked at were repeat words, phrases, right? Asking questions, understanding the context, and then looking at, if this will work or not. So let me project the question. Try and figure out which sentence is the odd one out. Some of you have come back and said C, 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 C. So most of you have come back and said C. Okay, I want to share something, okay, before you guys go off on a tangent. See, you also need to understand, I personally feel these out of context questions are not intelligently designed. I'll tell you why. Because what they will do is, there will be a long article, okay. They will choose one paragraph somewhere in the middle. They will take 4 sentences. Then they will take one sentence. Let's say they chose this is the second paragraph that they chose. Then they will take one sentence from the 4th paragraph or the 5th paragraph of the same article and put it here. You'll have to find the odd one out. Right now, if you personally ask me, that is not the way a question should be designed, because at the end of the day, it's coming under the same article, which means the main message or central idea or theme revolves around that, unless people are tuned to asking questions. Now, some of you don't do that. You don't ask questions. Now, let's go back to the context. I wanted to say this because you need to know the background with which these questions come. So, even if you have repeat words or phrases, does not mean necessarily that it is part of that particular paragraph. Yeah, let's go back. A, it says an investor who takes over the airline would have to generate profits on a scale that would make the deal worthwhile. Okay, so I have investor, I have airline, right? These are all could be repeat words. And if you look at B, it says the government's in principle approval to divest stake in the loss making national carrier Air India is welcome. So I have, what context are they talking about? If you look at some repeat words, Air India is what is repeated, right? Air India also is repeated. Yeah. And it's almost like, this almost seems like a topic sentence simply because it's saying this is what the deal is, this is a scenario, let me present the case to you. Right now, Air India is on a loss. Okay. So the government has decided, boss, let's divest stake in Air India, right? Then C says, but will any sane investor buy a stake in the company, stake that is laden with debt, even if 100% equity is handed over for, say, ₹1? D, a privatized Air India would cease to be a drain on the exchequer and also gain a sustainable capital structure and become more efficient. Okay, so a privatized meaning, if some investor is interested in taking over Air India and taking care of whatever the losses are, that would be the best plan to go. That's what D is saying, right? You need to understand the context, guys. A lot of us don't understand the context, which is why there is a problem. E, the best way is to let potential investors bid for Air India and select the bidder who is willing to take on the largest amount of debt. The government's payout should be the lowest. Okay, so if you look at all of this, right, I have a lot of repeat words. In fact, Air India, Air India, Air India. So we know the whole thing is about obviously Air India being on a loss, and the government is saying let's divest stake. So which means we are willing to pay part of it, but we also we're also looking for an investor who's saying, boss, I will also take care of half of the debts, right? That's what the context is. So once you understand the context, now it becomes easier. So if you look at it, if you ask me, B is setting the context, right? That's the topic sentence, telling me, hey, you know what? This is what the situation is. Air India is on a loss. I am the government. I am saying, I will do half, but I want somebody to invest also. Okay. Then, what is the ideal way? See, the context is presented, right? Scenario is presented. B comes up with a topic sentence saying, this is the deal right now. This is the issue right now. The issue is Air India is at a loss. Government is coming up with a in principle approval to divest stake in this loss making national carrier. Okay, so that's B. And then it says, okay, what's the ideal way to go? If you look at D, it says a privatized Air India would cease to be a drain on the exchequer and also gain a sustainable capital structure and become more efficient. So they're saying, how can Air India make up for its loss? D is the answer, right? It's saying if somebody is willing to take this up, a privatized Air India, so some big investor says, okay, I will take care, no problem, I have the money, D is the answer. But then it says, look at the contrast. The contrast, C comes in, right? The contrast is, but will any sane investor means anybody with good knowledge, with good judgment, with somebody who is wise, will any sane investor buy a stake in the company that is laden with debt, even if 100% equity is handed over for, say, rupees 1? Right? So, while you're saying, yes, privatized Air India will be the best option, but who is going to invest in Air India, which is under so much debt, right? That's what C is saying. And then we have E. E is saying the best way is to let potential investors bid for Air India and select the bidder who is willing to take on the largest amount of debt. The government's payout should be the lowest. So the government is saying, well, let's do one thing. Let it go for like an auction. Whoever wants to take the highest bid, let him take it. The rest, whatever remaining amount, the government will take it. Okay. So, which means the odd one out is A. Now, most of you might come back and say, why? Because I have investors, I have airline. But look at A. Let's read A. It says, an investor who takes over the airline would have to generate profits on a scale that would make the deal worthwhile. What deal worthwhile? Right? For me, the deal is not discussed in this context here for me. Right? I have the problem introduced. I have the best option suggested. I have the challenge discussed here. Who's going to take this up? Who's willing to take on this debt? And then, what can be a practical solution to this problem? Okay, fine. Let's not put all the weight on the investor itself. Let's give it for bidding. Right? Whoever is going to take on the largest amount of debt, let them do it. And the government will pay the rest. Right? So for me, A, I don't know what this deal they're talking about. What deal? I have no clarity on this. I have a feeling this A, that's what I'm saying. Don't get confused with repeat words. The A, if I ask a question, what deal are they talking about? Right? I am sure this sentence is there in that article somewhere. But it is not in line, or it is not logically or coherent in the given context. In this paragraph, if you ask me, B, D, C, E would be the right sequence in terms of logic, and not A. A, because it's not talking about, it's a, what deal, and they're talking about, good point, generating profits, right? An investor who takes over there would have to generate profits on a scale that would make the deal worthwhile. So for me, everything else is, there is a problem introduced, they are talking about this probable solution, they're talking about the challenge, and then they're arriving at a practical solution. That makes coherent sense for me. But A is saying, somewhere down the line in the article, maybe they're discussing something else, and they've discussed a deal, and they're saying, hey, you know what, if somebody is able to generate profits, then that deal would work out. So, yes, extremely tough. And like I said, this is a question that you can expect in a CAT exam or a GRE or a GMAT exam, but unfortunately it has been introduced in bank exams also. So the level at which we need to think is completely different. And if you're having a challenge with these sort of questions, the only problem is you're not understanding the context. Right? It's not enough if you just read, if you just look for repeat words and phrases. That alone will not work always. You have to understand what the context is trying to say. Yeah. So the odd one out is A. In fact, the right sequence would be B, D, C, E, if I'm not wrong. Out of context questions, there are different strategies. Each out of context question, you might have to apply a different strategy. If I go by repeat words and phrases, I'm obviously going to get confused with option A here, because option A also has repeat word investors, airline, right? But if I'm looking for a logical connect within the sentences, I'm looking for coherence within the sentence, I need to ask questions. I keep saying this, right? How do I form logical links? Questions, right? It is a question that challenges you, definitely. And this is of a higher order difficulty level, of course. But it's good for us to be at this level if we have to beat the competition, and in case this sort of a question comes in our exam, we'll at least know how to approach it. Yeah.